A crowded flight turns into a nightmare when a racist passenger slaps a black child. For a moment, silence grips the cabin, until a stranger rises from his seat. What he does next shocks everyone on board and changes the entire flight. The hum of the engines was steady, almost soothing, as passengers settled into their seats for a long-haul journey. Overhead bins clicked shut, seatbelts snapped into place, and the smell of recycled air mixed with faint traces of coffee and perfume drifted through the cabin. Among the travelers was a young boy, no older than 10, with wide, curious eyes. His mother sat beside him, adjusting his blanket and whispering gentle reminders about staying calm during the flight. He clutched a small toy plane in his hands, his imagination already soaring beyond the confines of the cabin. For the first hour, everything felt normal. The boy leaned against the window, marveling at the clouds, while his mother scrolled through her phone. Flight attendants wheeled carts down the aisles, offering drinks and snacks. Conversations rose and fell in a comfortable hum. But as peaceful as it seemed, an undercurrent of tension simmered, and it was about to erupt. A man a few rows back had been fidgeting since takeoff. His eyes darted, his jaw clenched, his restlessness spilling into annoyed sighs and muttered complaints. He was older, his face set in a permanent scowl, the kind of man who seemed to believe the world owed him deference. He kept glaring at the boy. Every laugh, every question, every movement seemed to scrape against his nerves. At first, the mother tried to ignore it. She shifted slightly, angling her body protectively toward her son. But the man's hostility grew bolder. He leaned forward, muttering insults under his breath, making sure they could hear. Words like loud and annoying slithered from his lips, laced with venom. The mother, calm but firm, asked him to stop. "He's just a child," she said quietly. But the man sneered. Then, in a single shocking moment, the tension snapped. The boy shifted in his seat, accidentally bumping the man's armrest. Without warning, the man's hand shot out, striking the child across the face. The sound, a sharp, sickening slap, cut through the cabin. The boy's toy plane fell to the floor, his wide eyes filling with tears as his mother screamed. Gasps erupted around them. A woman in the opposite row clutched her chest, horrified. A man further back leapt halfway out of his seat, shouting, "Hey! What's wrong with you?" But for a moment, time seemed frozen. The child whimpered, pressing his hand to his cheek, while his mother shielded him, her voice trembling with rage and disbelief. The flight attendant hurried over, her tray of drinks forgotten, her face pale. "Sir! That is absolutely unacceptable," she snapped. But the man wasn't done. His voice rose, ugly and full of hate. "He needs to learn how to behave," he barked, his words echoing over the stunned silence. That's when it happened. A tall figure near the middle of the cabin stood up. His presence was commanding, calm yet unshakably firm. Every eye turned to him as he moved forward, his voice low but resonant. "Enough." The man who had struck the child sneered. "Mind your business." But the stranger didn't flinch. He looked first at the boy, then at the mother, then back at the aggressor. "You just assaulted a child," he said, his tone steady but sharp. "And you will answer for it." The aggressor laughed, dismissive, but his bravado faltered under the stranger's gaze. Something in that man's eyes held weight, authority, a kind of strength that didn't need shouting. The other passengers felt it too. Murmurs spread. Someone muttered, "He's right. That man should be restrained." Another passenger raised their phone, recording. The mother, still trembling, clutched her son, her voice breaking as she whispered thanks to the stranger. The boy, though shaken, stared up at him with a glimmer of hope. The stranger knelt down for a moment, his tone softening. "You're brave," he told the child. "This isn't your fault." The boy nodded, his lip quivering, but there was strength returning to his eyes. The flight attendant's radio crackled as she called for the captain. The situation was escalating quickly, and everyone knew the plane couldn't afford chaos at 30,000 feet. The aggressor, realizing the tide had turned, tried to bluster his way out. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "It was just a slap. But the stranger cut him off, his voice rising just enough to carry through the cabin. "There's no such thing as just a slap when it's a child. You crossed a line, and everyone here knows it." His words struck like iron, resonating with the passengers. Heads nodded. A few clapped quietly, their courage growing. By now, the captain had emerged, his uniform crisp, his expression grave. He listened quickly to the flight attendant's report, glanced at the trembling boy, and then fixed his eyes on the aggressor. "Sir, you are no longer welcome on this flight," the captain declared. "You will remain seated until we land, and security will be waiting for you." The man's face strained of color. He sputtered, trying to protest, but the crew and passengers had made their decision. The stranger who had stood up earlier placed a firm hand on the back of the aggressor's seat, leaning just enough to remind him he wasn't in control anymore. The aggressor sank back, his fight collapsing into silence. The rest of the cabin seemed to exhale. The boy leaned into his mother's embrace, finally allowing his tears to fall. The stranger quietly returned to his seat, but not before nodding to the child, a silent promise that he was safe now. Passengers murmured words of comfort to the mother, offering tissues, kind smiles, and whispered reassurances. As the flight continued, the incident became a quiet storm of conversations. Passengers shared their outrage, their disbelief that anyone could strike a child so coldly. But they also spoke of the stranger, the man who had stood up when it mattered most. His courage had shifted the balance, turning fear into strength, silence into solidarity. When the plane finally touched down, the aggressor was escorted off first, flanked by security. The mother and her son were guided gently off afterward, with the captain himself offering an apology and a promise that the airline would handle everything. The boy still clutched his toy plane, a little battered from the fall, but his eyes looked stronger now. And as for the stranger, he slipped away quietly, not seeking recognition or praise. But for everyone on that flight, his actions left a mark. In a moment of cruelty, he had shown the power of standing up, of saying, "Enough," when no one else could. The boy would never forget that day. Not because of the slap, but because a stranger reminded him, and everyone watching, that dignity, justice, and protection don't come from titles or uniforms. They come from the courage to act. If this story moved you, let it be a reminder: silence helps cruelty, but courage changes everything. Would you have stood up in that moment? Share your thoughts below, and if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Together, we can keep shining a light on the truth that kindness and justice always matter.